Hi everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another fun beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and notification bell and you'll always know when we're posting new content. Today's video is a wonderfully festive earring that I'm calling the New Year's Kiss earring, and I hope that it reminds you of the same thing that it reminds me of, which is that fabulous crystal ball that drops on New Year's Eve in Times Square. And of course, the crystals that we have here, just to me, it gives it this very kinetic look as if the ball's dropping, has a lot of movement to it, and of course it's a fantastic color that's sure to remind you of any disco ball, which is certainly a great color scheme for New Year's Eve. So let me go over what it is that we're going to need. As you can see, I've made half the earring here already, so the materials that I show you here are what you need for the other half. And as always, we'll link you below to everything that you need right on our website, EurekaCrystalBeads.com. So for the other half of the earring, I'm going to need one 8mm round Swarovski crystal, and this one is in ever versatile crystal AB. You can see that beautiful iridescent finish. And again, this just really reminded me of that crystal ball that drops in Times Square. And I have some bicones here. So I have 10 bicones. These are 4mm and they are crystal cal 2 times. And if you're not familiar with that crystal, cal is an acronym. It stands for Comet Argent Light. And in this case, it's 2 times, so that sort of mirror finish is over the entire bicone. And it's really incredibly reflective and really fun, and I think it's beautiful for the holiday season. I personally really love metallics for the winter and for the holidays in general. And then I have my findings. So I have the other half of my ear wire here, and I'm using a nice little ball end ear wire. I think that adds a really nice finished touch. I have a piece of Rolo chain here. Now this is sold by the foot, so if you buy a foot, you're going to get plenty of earrings out of that foot. And I just have a piece cut here that is 11 links long. And then I have my head pins here. Now these are ball end head pins, and again, I think they add a nice finished look to the bottom of your crystals, especially when you have an earring that has a lot of dangles on it. And these ones are 2 inches long, which is nice because if you find that wrapping head pins is a little tough because you don't have a lot of wire to hold on to, these are going to give you plenty of wire to hold on to, and they're inexpensive on top of that. Okay, so my tip for when I'm doing any project that has a lot of dangles, a lot of repetition, is I try to make it as much of a production line as possible. And I know that the earring sitting in my hand probably isn't going to do it as much justice as hanging vertically, but it really is such a lovely, lovely design. And for those of you who do craft fairs, vendor shows, which are, of course are especially popular and I'm sure keep you extra busy around the holiday season, these would be a pretty good sell, I think, especially if you do what I'm doing, which is marketing them as sort of a New Year's Eve earring or a holiday earring. I think they will be a really good item for you to carry, and they're not too expensive to make. Okay, so let me show you the tools we're going to use. These are the 3 basic wire working tools. I have my chain nose pliers here, which of course are flat inside and smooth, which is very important, and they taper to a point. I have my round nose pliers here, which also taper to a point, but there's no flat edges. They're kind of like 2 ice cream cones. There's no flat edges. This is what we'll make our loops with. And I have my side wire cutters. You're going to want to make sure that for head pins you use a pair of cutters that is meant for this kind of wire. You want to make sure you do not use your flex wire cutters that you would use to cut your soft flex with, because this will dull those. So just like you don't want to cut your soft flex with these, because soft flex will dull these. So always make sure that you're using the right tool for the right job. Big tip from Leah. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little chain here, and again, I've cut it to the length of 11 links long. And of course, you can make this earring as long or as short as you like. If you don't want to go quite as long, you don't have to use as many. And these bicones are sold in, this bicone here, it's sold in packs of 20. So that works out well because I just use 10 per side. But you can certainly make this longer or shorter. You could use 5 per side, and then you get 2 pairs out of that package of bicones, which can be fun too. It'll still look like a beautiful earring. And I'm going to slide my chain right onto the loop of my ear wire. You'll notice I just swiveled it open to the side, and then I'm going to swivel it back. You always want to open loops, whether it's a loop on an ear wire or a loop on a jump ring. You always want to swivel to the side. You never want to open like this because eventually down here will get weak and break. So always swivel open. Now, first of all, what I have here, which is just the ear wire and a chain, is a great base for a lot of different styles of earrings. You could hang just a crystal at the bottom, a pendant, a few simple beads at the bottom. You can decorate this chain as much or as little as you want. Obviously, we're covering up quite a bit of it with all the bicones since we're making a bit of a fancier earring for a lovely night out on the town. But you can certainly use this as a great base for any sort of really beautiful dangly earring. Now, next I'm going to go to my head pins here. And what I mentioned before is working in as much of a production line as I can. This not only helps your steps to look more consistent as far as how they look visually, to make sure you have the same amount of wraps on each loop and the loops are the same size, but it also will make you work faster. It's a more efficient way to work because you're going to be switching tools a lot less. You'll be holding one tool longer. And so that ends up making your job a bit more efficient. And like I said earlier as well, if you are the type that does craft shows and vendor shows, you know, your time is of course precious, and you want to make sure that you're able to streamline your process as much as possible if you have a lot of something to make. Or even if you don't, these are just great as gifts, and you don't want to spend hours and hours and hours necessarily on something where you don't have to. Okay, so lastly I have my 8mm crystal on the last head pin. Now I'm going to go to my chain nose pliers next, and I'm going to grab each of these head pins regardless of which type of bead is on them, and I'm going to grab the wire right above the bead, and it's so close that the pliers are touching the bead. It's right there. The bead cannot wiggle up and down. It's okay if it can spin, but you don't want it to wiggle up and down. And I'm grabbing with the tip of the pliers, and I'm just going to make a nice little sharp 90-degree bend. And when I remove my pliers, you're going to see that now I do have some wiggle room. And that's good because that little space that we created, that's where our wraps are going to go. And so by the time we're done, this won't be able to wiggle up and down anymore, and it'll be nicely wrapped in place. So I'm going to do this step on all of my head pins. Okay, so I'll be back in just a second. Okay, as you can see, I've made that 90-degree bend on all of my pins here. And of course, I have it on that beautiful dangle for the bottom as well. Now, we're going to use our round nose pliers to make our loop. So I'm going to grab the wire right at that corner. And as far as where you hold it on the pliers, whether it's at the tip, whether it's further in, that just determines how big your loop is going to be. So we don't need a loop that's enormous. I like to go pretty close to the tip. We want nice tiny loops. There we go, there's my focus there. Okay, so I'm going to take my head pin here, my wire, and I'm going to wrap it up and over the pliers to start to form that round loop. And now, before I keep going, before I cross past this crystal, I want to shift my pliers forward to get the bottom part of the pliers out of the way. And now I can keep going. And you'll notice that I ended with that same 90-degree angle that I started with. I just now have a loop up in the corner. And now my loop is a little off center because you want to see this loop like a lollipop on top of a lollipop stick. And my lollipop is a little bit off. So I'm going to just hold that bead there, and I'm going to roll my loop over so it's a little more centered, and then make sure to bring that back down to that 90-degree angle. And with this kind of wire working, it's that 90-degree angle that really is going to make your wire wraps nice and neat and clean. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make my little loop on all of my head pins here, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, I have all my loops now created on my little dangles here. And again, like I said, this is the best way that you can work the most efficiently and get the most consistency. So I definitely recommend doing as much of a production line as possible. So now it's time to get our dangles onto our chain here. So I like to start at the bottom. Now in this particular design, I have my disco ball, or not my disco ball, my New Year's Eve ball at the very bottom of my chain because I feel like it sort of gives that look like it just fell on New Year's Eve at second it struck midnight. So I'm going to just take my end link of chain, and you're going to slip it into the loop we made, just like a key onto a key ring. It just goes right into there, just like this. Now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, and at this point, if you're not sure which pair of pliers to grab, the chain nose or the round nose, remember we've made our round shape, we're done with our round pliers. You can put them off to the side. For any gripping purposes, you want to use your chain nose pliers, because if you were to use your round nose pliers, because they don't have a flat edge, you can actually dent your wire. So go with your chain nose. I'm going to get in here carefully, and I'm grabbing the loop that I created and not the tail of wire. Like, I'm not grabbing where the tail of wire is overlapping with the little bit of space we have there. So now I'm going to take my tail here, and I'm going to start to wrap it. My first wrap is going to be close to that loop right underneath it, and each wrap after that gets me closer to the bead, and I've left about enough space for 2 nice, neat, clean wraps. Now we just have to take our cutter, and we're going to snip off that wire as close as we can get it. And no matter how close you get it, there's always going to be that little bit of wire that's still left sticking out. Like, you can see it right there. And it's really important to tuck that in, because that could catch on someone's hair, it could catch on a scarf, and we don't want that to happen, because we also don't want it to get pulled out of the ear either. So we're going to use our chain nose for this, and you're just going to go and gently tuck it in. So now, there we go. So now it's sitting in there perfectly. You can see it got nudged right in there, so now it's not sticking out anymore. Now, like I said earlier, this alone is a beautiful, simple, dangly earring, which gets you a nice, simple earring, but with some length to it. But we're gonna go ahead and adorn that chain just a little bit more. So, one of the things that I tend to do with this style of earring, and which you may not be able to see as well because I'm having to hold the earring out flat, is my crystals are actually spiraling around my chain. And this is good for 2 reasons. First of all, it looks lovely to have the crystals spiral along the chain, but also it helps to ensure that they're going to be spread evenly all up and down the length and around the chain. You're not going to have any empty spots sort of sticking out. So to do it like this is a really nice way to get some even coverage. So we're going to start by taking our first little 4mm bicone head pin, and I'm going to thread it onto the link above the one I used to dangle my 8mm crystal from. And the way my earring sits, you have links of chain that run 2 different ways. So if you look at the links of chain here, you can look through some, and then the other ones you'd have to turn the chain to look through. So I'm sticking it into a chain, into the link above the one I've already used, and you'll notice that that's the link second to the bottom that I would have to turn in order to look through. So by making sure that my head pin is dangling on the front of that link means that my crystal sort of won't be wasted on the back. I mean, it's going to be spiraled along it anyway, but at least with that first one, it's going to be sitting on the front of the earring. So I'm just going to go right in, pop it right down into my loop there, and now I can wrap that loop shut. Grab it carefully with your chain nose pliers. And it should be, if you were consistent and you did that whole production line thing, it should be another consistent 2 wraps to fill up that space. And if you're new to wire wrapping, definitely go nice and slow. You want to make sure that your wraps look neat and clean. And then we're going to tuck in that last little bit that's left. So you can see that when I hold out the earring, that little crystal sits on the front of the earring as opposed to the back of the earring. Okay, so that's sort of important. That's where I like to start. After this, they're simply going to spiral up. So now, as far as, well, how do I get them to spiral up? Well, we're going to look at that link of chain that we just used. Okay, and at this point, we're going to use the link above it, but you can pick either side of that link. Now, that just determines the direction you're going to spiral, clockwise or counterclockwise. I tend to like to spiral clockwise. It's really up to you, but once you start, you obviously have to stay consistent. And then the side of the link we pick next, or rather the side we pick of the next link is what's going to determine that spiral. So I'm going to spiral clockwise, so I'm going to go to that next link up, and I'm going to go to the left side of it, and it's the left side that I'm going to snap right down into my loop there, and I'm going to wrap it shut. I'm going to get my nice 2 good wraps, give it a snip, and give it a tuck. Now, here's where it can start to get a little tricky, because it was pretty easy to get our first bicone on there. All we had to do was get it on the front of the next link up. And now we have our next dangle on the left side of the link above that. But now what we have to do is keep turning our earring. So if you look at the dangle we just did, let me try to hold it in a way that, there we go. You can see that it's sitting on the left side of that link. I'm going to now turn my earring, because now it's going to spiral up. Just think of a spiral staircase. Then we went on the left. Now we'll go on the back of the next link. Then we'll go on the right of the link after that, and then the front again. So basically, front, left, back, right. Front, left, back, right. So that's how you're going to get your spiral. And as you do it, I think you're going to see how exactly it builds up. And what's also nice is that once you get your crystal on there, as far as getting your loop threaded through that link, you can hold your earring up and you'll see whether the spiral's there. You'll see whether you broke the spiral or not, or whether you continued on. And then if you happen to pick the wrong link, or you picked the wrong side of that link, you haven't wrapped your loop shut yet. So you can just pull that head pin off and then reposition it on the other side of the next link up. Because remember, we have one dangle on each and every link going up. The issue is simply determining which side of that link, front or back, right or left. But again, it's going to go up as a spiral. So front, left, back, right, and just keep repeating that. So let me see if I can horizontally show you what I'm talking about here. I know it's a little tough, but look at this top one I did. See how it sits on the back there? So now this next one is going to go on the right side of the front, or right side of the next link up, I should say. And again, if you looked at it and you said, you know what, that doesn't look right, because you can hold it right up and you'll see whether your crystal is sitting in the right place. And if that's not right, you just slide it right off and you can reposition it. So don't wait until after you wrap it shut to take a look at it. Take a look at it as you go before those wraps are shut, making your crystal a bit more permanently in place. Wrap my wire, snip, and tuck. So again, seeing it horizontal here, it doesn't really, you're seeing it flat, it doesn't really help to show the spiral, but I'm sure at the beginning of the video, you'll have seen some lovely pictures of it sitting vertical where you'll see that spiral starting. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of these dangles on, and I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, I'm about to get my final dangle on there. You can see how lovely this looks. Now, the dangle I just finished is the one that is on the front of the link that is second from the top. So our very top link is the one that's attached to our ear wire. The link below it has the crystal that I last did, and it's on the front of the link. So therefore, our very final crystal here is going to go on the left side of the link above it. And it's, like I said, it's also the link that your ear wire is dangling from as well. Let's get in there with my chain nose. Get my nice 2 clean, neat wraps. Now, if you have 3 wraps every time, that's fine. If you have 2 wraps every time, that's fine. The key is consistency for the look of the earring because you have so many of them. And I would probably say try not to go as many as 4 wraps, because then what happens is you're starting to see more wire wrapping than you are of the beautiful crystals. So have your goal be either a consistent 2 wraps or a consistent 3 wraps. But I think 2 is sort of ideal, because again, with beads this small, these are 4mm, I don't want to see more space from wire wrapping than I do of these beautiful, beautiful crystal cow Swarovski bicones. All right, let me get the other one in there. Gorgeous. This is beautiful for, I mean, any time of year, really. It's really versatile as far as those colors. But I think with those fun metallics and that crystal AB, I think this is just stunning for that New Year's Eve look that perhaps you or people you sell to or people you know and love that you want to give a beautiful gift to would enjoy wearing. All right, folks, that's it. Thanks for watching. Make sure to visit us on over at EurekaCrystalBeads.com for everything that I used in this video, and hopefully we can satisfy all of your beading and jewelry needs. Bye.